Alright, so what we're doing here is just got our styrofoam head. You can also use like a life cast, but just for keeping the budget down, we're using a styrofoam foam head here. Painted it to match the color of the chiffon clay to make it easier to kind of see what's what. So what we've done here is just kind of get the cheek rip with the teeth showing through. Kind of blended the edges here a bit. Now we're just putting in some extra detail, gums, teeth, that kind of thing. It helps to use some talc just to kind of keep everything nice and loose. You'll see in a second why I'm doing this. Is because when you're putting like detail on stuff, a piece of plastic does help a lot. It helps you from keeping yourself from going too deep with your dig. And like little details, like these little pores, like texture on the gums and stuff. Kind of just put the plastic down, and just these tiny little indents you put here. Now they're going to be hard to see, but once you go ahead and paint this latex application, alcohol base, you can use like a latex tint or dye that you mix in with your regular latex, and go ahead and paint these with like a wash. Nothing too thick, nothing too deep. This is going to be cast in like a flesh tone latex, so when I pull it out, it's going to look a lot like this right here. A little bit darker, more flesh tone, and then we'll go ahead. You'd be surprised what a little bit of tint and stain will do to this. Make it look pretty good. You'll see by the pictures later on. But for right now, we're just kind of going back and little touch-ups here and there. A lot of it, like I said, you can't really make out here because it's all one color chiffon clay. When you go ahead and put the dye or tint, you'll see the difference, and you'll actually come up with a pretty nice, relatively inexpensive application that you can use the mold for over and over again. I'll be casting the mold for this out of plaster or like ultra hydrocal, something like that. Again, we're keeping the prices down quite a bit. I think clear like this is about $10 for a nice size brick. Styrofoam head like this is going to be, I don't know, $8. Some of these tools, you can get a decent tool. Any of the hobby shops will have some like that. You can get a small set for like $5. You can get a nicer set for like 40. Geez, whatever you want to spend, I guess, But for this, we're just keeping this on a relatively inexpensive budget, and you get pretty good results with it. So we've done this already. You can see I started quite a bit. It's hard to tell in this photo, this image right here. But we did the texture in the gums. The teeth are done. There's actually a lot more detail you can't catch until it's cast in latex and then tinted. You'll see all that detail pop right up at you. Blended the edges quite a bit, maybe about 1/4 inch around. That'll lay on the actor or actress's face. When using like a life cast, you're going to get a perfect fit because you're making a cast of the person you're working with. Unfortunately, when you're working with so many zombies as we do on Zombie Hunters City of the Dead, we never know who our actor or actress are going to be. So we tend to use a lot of things like this because they do offer versatility, and we're not pegged into one particular actor and actress. And the good thing about latex is it does stretch, it does adhere to your face. I use like Prozade and that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to finish this up. A lot of this was done prior to me starting to film. I should have filmed this whole thing a little earlier, but you'll see I did take photographs, and you can refer to the photographs. But oh, and latex. Latex is relatively inexpensive. I mean, if you get a little container of it at like a Halloween shop, you may spend $30. If you look online, you can probably get a quart for the same price. The tints are a little harder to come across, but they're not impossible. You can certainly find them. Just go to eBay or something like that, one of those stores, online shopping, and you will certainly find a tint or a dye. I like using them. I mean, when you're on set anyway, you're going to wind up adding a lot of like blood to these kind of areas over here. You're going to match flesh tone with cream makeups and that kind of stuff. When you apply the latex prosthetic, you're going to have a small seam around the whole thing. What you're going to want to do is first put the latex application on the person's face, kind of mark where it's going to go. When you find out where it's going to go, remove it, place your Pros-Aid or adhesive underneath it. You can use spirit gum. Make sure it's tacky on both sides and pretty much dry. Drop it on there. You're going to have that little, tiny little bit of a bridge or a ledge, if you will. If you make it thin enough, you won't catch that much of a ledge. But you're still going to want to use Pros-Aid around the perimeter, kind of brush it out, fan it out. Once that sets, there you go. You can go ahead and put your makeup on. I mean, Bondo works too. It's a lot like Pros-Aid, a little bit thicker though. If you have a thicker gap or ledge, but for the most part. And the Bondo I'm referring to is not the car stuff, not the car Bondo. It's you can look it up, like the sculpting websites, some of the major ones I go to a lot. So, I mean, this is pretty much getting to the edges. Oh, also, prior to getting to the point we're at right now, you really can't make it out here. The edges, a lot of people tend to just go ahead and blend. It's important to go back and add little lines, like little bits of wrinkles. Nothing too drastic, unless the person you're making the application for is an older person. But you're going to want to make these little kind of squiggly marks over the actual skin part here, this entire area around here, and bleed them out. Take them out a little further than you have to go with them, because those little details prevent the makeup from looking flat later on. It gives a lot of dimension to the application later, and you'll see here. I mean, you'd be surprised. We try to do as much as we can with what we have available to us. Working with 70, 80 zombies at a pop, 6 or 8 makeup artists, you try to find these ways to get the best result in a moderate price range. We don't have $10 million an episode to work with. That being said, even on my personal creation of props and stuff, I try to do as much as I can with what's available to me, and everyone likes a great result at a great price. And this is exactly middle range kind of stuff. Never go straight, by the way, when you're doing these little wrinkly lines. Always have a bit of a shake in your line. Nature, nothing's ever straight. You're going to constantly shake it up. Nothing too deep either. And you're going to want to go over, left, right, up, down, angles, and all kinds of great stuff, because again, you're trying to mimic nature with these. Nothing worse than an application that the seams don't match and the skin doesn't match, and like you may not pick up on it right away, but you'll know it doesn't look right. So you can see my hand kind of just shaking. That's the way to do it. I mean, I did this for about half an hour prior to even filming this little bit right here, so a lot more has gone into this. You can kind of get an idea. Teeth there. I mean, you can sculpt, you can do a bunch of different things with it, even with the teeth. Like the teeth I did here, I actually cast these from my own teeth. What did I wind up using for that? I think I used actually just you can use things like alginate, which is like a dental item that they use to make copies of your teeth when they're making dentures and stuff. I think for this particular one, I had used clay that I pressed into my own teeth to get this impression. Let that freeze for a little bit, and then I wound up making a copy of that. And then these came out. I mean, it didn't have to be perfect because I had to go ahead and resculpt them anyway completely. If it was more realistic, like cadaver stuff, less zombie, then yeah, I would go ahead, use alginate, like a dental tray, pull it, cast it in dental stone, and then make a mold of that, grab that mold, put that in here, and sculpt it again. But again, we're keeping things pretty simple, and that's a great way to do it. That being said, you may not want to put clay in your own mouth or on your teeth. If you have a skull around, like a anatomy skull or what have you, you can use that. I'd prefer you use that instead of getting clay in your mouth. I don't recommend doing that. So when you're dealing with zombies too, you're dealing with things like chipped teeth, little notches and niches here and what have you. I've done some of that. Nothing too crazy. Because see, a makeup like this isn't about horror, like car accidents, scary stuff. It's just about that new turned zombie look. Something that is just not quite right. So something like this, I mean, it's not a massive amount of trauma. It's enough to get your attention, and then not to mention, you add things like thick blood. Okay, after this is put on, glued on, adhesive and everything, you're going to go ahead and blend the seam, and you can put makeup on it. Okay, once the makeup is on there, you're going to put thick blood in all these little crevices and creases right here. Not enough to kind of kill your detail, but just enough to kind of give it depth. Thick blood works really well because if it's thick, it almost looks like red-black. If it's thin, it just looks like red. So you put that there. Then you're going to go ahead and you can use things like a thinner blood or like a vampire kind of blood. Nothing that's going to drip, though, which is great about thick blood because it does not drip. You put it down here, kind of having it pour down the person's neck, and they look like that new, fresh zombie. And it's a great effect. You can see by the photograph that I've included here. Works great for men, women. The great thing about this particular application is you can turn it upside down and make it go on the left or right side of the face. So it's one of those things that you can use multiple times. Really cool about this also, it blends right into the actual person's lips. So their lips end about here. They can't open their mouth and close their mouth during a film shoot because you'd see that these teeth won't open and close. But they can't eat. So you can do this application makeup on somebody earlier in the makeup process and then have them walk around and not have to sit there with their mouth completely closed and not being able to function, you know, prior to being filmed. It's just one of those things. We really try to be as cooperative with our victims, our actors and actresses, as possible. They do give us their time, and they trust us with a lot. So, okay, so this step is pretty much done. What I'm going to say to do next, and I don't have the materials, I'm going to do that here, so I'm just going to show it to you in picture form, is going to be casting. But I can't explain it. We're gonna keep this real simple, and we're gonna do a plaster cast. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put a little talc on the whole thing. I mean, you can use baby powder. You can spray with release. There's a bunch of different ways to release it. But since you're working with clay, baby powder works fine. Don't keep too much of it on. Wipe a lot of it away. You're gonna use mixture plaster. Now, when you're mixing plaster, putting it on here, you're gonna want to use Dick Smith way. Okay, Dick Smith way is you put a little room temperature water in a container. You're going to keep adding plaster to that container very lightly back and forth until the plaster rises, actually not rises, but sits on top of the water line. Okay, adding water to plaster is not the way to do it. Adding plaster to water is the way to do it. Once it kind of gets to the top of that plaster, the level of the water in there, you're going to see it begin to kind of like have a crackle effect. You're done. Stop adding plaster. Mix it up completely. You get a perfect like pancake batter consistency. With a small brush, brush it into these little areas here so you get the best detail, right? Once you've brushed lightly and gently across the entire thing, you can go ahead and glob the rest of that plaster on there. Be neat about it, okay? Make sure you give yourself like a 2-inch perimeter with that plaster. Let it set. If you want to put some bandage over it, another layer of plaster, be my guest. That's fine to kind of prolong the life of that mold. The mold will last about 10-20 pulls of latex before any real detail begins to go away. So it's a great amount that you can get for it. It's really inexpensive. $10 gets you a container of plaster. $20 gets you like 10 pounds of plaster. And that's pretty much it. The plaster mold will wind up looking something a lot like this. This is kind of what a plaster mold will look like. This one's really thin. You can make them a bit thicker than this though, but you'll see like this right here, the teeth are over here, like I mentioned before, and this is from a smaller version of the same thing. I had to resculpt it, but I happen to have this around here. These are the lips that go over here, so it's the lefty side of that. But yeah, so I mean, this is what you get. Make it a bit thicker, and then when you're going to go ahead and actually make one of these, this is the original one that went into here. See? So what you're going to do is just go ahead and paint it with liquid latex. If you want to tint it, that's fine. If you don't, you can certainly paint it after. But what you're going to do is paint all the detail in here everything. Make sure you get every little bit of that. It's important. After you go ahead and paint that, make sure you keep it thin on the perimeter, okay? The thicker you make it, the more of a ledge you're going to get. The more of a ledge you're going to get, the more you're going to have to work to kind of blend it onto the face later on, okay? So you're going to put it on. This is where it's going to wind up looking. Put a thick layer in the middle, a regular layer on the whole thing, pretty thin, okay? Once that dries, keep it in front of the fan. It helps it a lot. Your second layer, bring it in about 1/4 of an inch. Do one more layer, okay? Let that set. We'll let that totally dry. Touch it, you'll feel it. Bring it in 1 more 1/4 of an inch and paint it one more time. So it's 3 layers. Sorry about that. 3 layers in the center, 2 layers close to the perimeter, and 1 layer on the outside. You can bring it up, make 2 layers on the outside, 3, and then finally 4 in the center. Once that sets completely, you have a very thin edge, a thicker edge going towards the center, and then finally a thickest edge in the middle. You can use a needle or a razor or something like that, and you can even use like a tool like this, kind of pick up the edge a little bit on there. That's latex. It's going to look like this. You're going to pick up the little edge on there. Once you get it, hold it for a second, and you're going to keep grabbing it. Pull it very gently. At this point, it's very, very delicate because clean latex will stick to clean latex like you wouldn't believe. This is where the talcum powder comes back. You're going to use a little bit of talc. Cover your whole prosthetic, right? Once your whole prosthetic is pretty much coated, you're free to kind of bring it onto itself. Once it catches onto itself, catch it and continue to hit that inside. Every time you pull a little bit away, continue to pull it. As you get to about here, you're going to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Pull gently and keep hitting it with talc. Once it's with talc, it won't stick to itself anymore. You'll have a piece that looks just like this. And this is, there we go, this is your teeth with your gore, your skin, a bit of an edge to it. See how thin that is? That's pretty thin. I mean, you can go thinner than that, of course, but it all depends on the accuracy of your mold. And that's pretty much it. So this right here is the original version. This is my updated version of the same application, but more detail involved in this new one. And thank you for stopping by and checking out. Quick, relatively easy, super inexpensive sculpt and latex creation of a prosthetic that you can use for your zombies or accident victim. Enjoy!